Hello, everyone. Tonight we are heading into a tale full of buttons, mistaken identities, and royal confusion. Right now, outside your window, the world is quiet. Maybe a streetlight hums, maybe a dog gives a soft, distant bark. But in this story, we're opening the door to a sleepy little kingdom where one tailor's forgotten button stirs up more fuss than a dragon on laundry day. You've been carrying the weight of the day, I know. Thoughts bouncing around your head like popcorn in a microwave. But as we drift into tonight's story, you'll feel each of them settle. The pace will slow, your eyes will feel heavier, and that delicious feeling of sleep will start to sneak in like a cat looking for a warm lap. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I love seeing where these stories are traveling. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. Part 1. You push open your shop's creaky wooden door for the last time, the little bell above it giving a tired ding like it knows this is goodbye. The sign on the window reads, "Hems and Hope, fine tailoring since forever." But the chalk's faded, the letters ghostly. Not a single coat, waistcoat, or royal robe has crossed your counter in months. The city has changed. People now buy machine-sewn clothes from across the sea. Shiny, mass-produced things that smell faintly of salt and oil and disappointment. Your tailor's hands are calloused, steady. Even now, you press a final stitch into a coat you've been patching not for a customer, but for yourself. A faded olive green thing with one sleeve longer than the other and a lining that's more patch than original fabric. But hey, it's warm. It's yours. And it's getting cold out there. You reach into your little jar of leftover buttons. These aren't just buttons. Oh no, they're survivors. Some are chipped, some are hand-painted. One still smells vaguely like licorice. But tonight, your fingers find a button that you swear you've never seen before. It's round, metal, and surprisingly weighty, shiny like polished pewter. On its face, a tiny, almost accidental pattern, like an eye, or maybe a sunflower, depending on how sleepy your brain feels. You thread your needle, squint under the oil lamp's amber glow, and attach the mystery button to your coat, right over your heart. Looks like royalty, you whisper to no one and laugh. It's one of those tired laughs that has a little sadness curled in it. You don't lock the shop when you leave. You just close the door and let it sigh shut behind you. Outside, the air is crisp. The stars flicker like they're whispering bedtime stories of their own. You walk along the cobblestones, head down, hands in your pockets, already dreaming of leftover soup and maybe stealing a clean pillowcase from the laundry line behind the bakery. But then, you sneeze. It's a big, silly, full-body sneeze, one that makes you bend over just enough for the button to pop clean off your coat. It hits the stone road with a comical plink and starts to roll. Now, in a perfect world, a button would just stop after a few inches. But not this button. It rolls forward, left, then right, dodging a puddle, scooting past a startled rat, bouncing down a tiny step, almost as if it knows exactly where it's going. You start to follow it, but pause. It's just a button, right? And your knees? Not what they used to be. Still, that button is really rolling. It curves past the candlemaker's alley. It sails through a market stall where onions are snoring in baskets. It even zips straight through the legs of a sleepwalking goose. The goose honks indignantly, but the button doesn't care. It's on a mission. You trail it halfway down the hill before it takes a final dramatic bounce, lands in a puddle with a quiet plop, and sinks out of sight. You sigh, hands on your hips. Fine, be that way. You head home. One button short, but too tired to care. Maybe you'll stitch a potato there tomorrow. You've done weirder things. But the button, it's just getting started. Later that night, under a pale slice of moonlight, the puddle where your button vanished begins to ripple. Not because of magic, not exactly, but because the palace's underground drainage system is as old and complicated as your grandmother's stew recipe. The button floats through a cracked pipe, past sleeping frogs and snoozing spiders until it washes up, gently gleaming onto the back steps of the royal stables. And who should find it? Horace, stable boy. 18 years old, loves sweet buns, hates Mondays, and once got fired from a bakery for putting googly eyes on every loaf of bread. Horace squints at the button in the moonlight, picks it up. Huh? It does look important. He turns it over in his fingers. The faint design glows in the moonlight. And just for a second, maybe because he skipped dinner, he swears it blinks. Nope, he says, pocketing it. Not my problem. But it is now. Because the next morning, while sweeping hay out of the royal stables, Horace, bless his clumsy, donut-obsessed heart, drops the button smack into the path of Commander Bristle. Bristle is everything Horace isn't. Clean, precise, allergic to humor. He wears his mustache like a warning sign. And when Bristle sees the button on the ground, he freezes, bends down, picks it up with his gloved fingers like he's touching a piece of dragon gold. Oh no, he whispers. What? Horace gulps. This is the lost royal crest. Bristle's voice is barely audible, full of awe and terror. It hasn't been seen since the great disappearance. Horace opens his mouth, then wisely closes it. The commander holds it to the light. That odd sunflower eye design is shimmering now. Bristle's face pales. Sound the bells, he barks. Wake the queen, we've found the artifact. Horace, now sweating like a cinnamon bun in July, can only think, I should have just stayed in bed. Waiting for continue. The royal bells ring long before sunrise. You hear them in your sleep, tucked into your narrow bed under 3 lumpy quilts. The sound slips into your dreams like melted butter. In your dream, you're back in your shop, but everything is made of soup. Spools of noodles, tomato thread jackets, crouton pincushions. You reach for a spoon instead of scissors, and the bell above the door rings just as the cabbage mannequin tries to buy a tuxedo. Then the bells ring louder, really loud, and you blink awake, disoriented and cranky. Too early for royal nonsense, you grumble. Little do you know, the nonsense has already begun. Across the city, Commander Bristle marches through the palace halls with the button held high on a velvet pillow. He's already instructed the guards to stand at full attention. The morning kitchen staff has been locked in the pantry until their loyalty can be verified. And Horace, poor Horace, is now stationed awkwardly beside the Queen's personal breakfast cart, trying not to sneeze near the scones. Meanwhile, the button has begun its second life. No longer just a fastener on a moth-bitten jacket, it's now a potential relic of untold power. It rests under candlelight in the royal display room, between the sacred feather of Lady Goosebump and the unsharpened sword of reluctant justice. But let's backtrack just a bit, shall we? After the initial panic, a special council is summoned. It consists of 1. Grand Historian Thelius, who once misread a menu and declared lentils illegal for 3 days. 2. Magistrate Tunwin, who hasn't slept in a week and smells faintly of shoe polish. 3. Princess Velda, who thinks everything is a test of her patience, and she's usually right. 4. And of course, Queen Marilena, who currently holds the record for most dramatic cape flips in a single banquet. They gather around the table in the great oval room. The button rests before them on a tiny blue cushion, looking smug, or at least as smug as a button can reasonably look. Thelius leans forward. It's definitely ancient, possibly enchanted. Tunwin nods solemnly. It vibrates slightly when I hum near it. Velda rolls her eyes. That was your nose, Tunwin. The Queen says nothing at first. She's watching the button like it might explode into interpretive dance. Have the oracles seen it? She asks softly. They're still playing parchment dice, Your Majesty, says Bristle, bowing. Then we'll decide for ourselves. She leans back. Her throne squeaks just a bit, which slightly ruins the majestic moment. This design here, says Thelius, tapping the center. It resembles the emblem of the Forgotten Crown. You know, the one we painted over in the Great Hall, because it creeped out visiting dignitaries. Everyone stares at the button again. I say, says Tunwin slowly, this might be one of the 6 seals of the Old Realm. Weren't there only 5? Velda says. Details, Tunwin huffs. Outside the room, the palace buzzes. Whispers of an ancient object float through the kitchens and servant corridors. One lady-in-waiting claims it's a sky coin from the gods. A footman starts making tiny statues of it out of mashed potatoes. But inside the palace, the decisions move fast. The Queen orders the object to be safeguarded in the royal vault. Commander Bristle arranges for 5 guards per corner. He personally interviews each guard with questions like, do you believe buttons are inherently dangerous? If this artifact whispered to you at night, what would you do? How do you feel about lapels? Meanwhile, you're doing your best to ignore the whole thing. After all, it's not your problem. Just a city full of overreacting royal types, right? Except the next morning, things get weird. First, your neighbor, old Marcy with the pigeons, knocks on your door in a frenzy. "Have you heard?" she says. "The palace has discovered a relic, a shining medallion from the Age of Thread." You stare. The what? They say it foretells the rise of a lost Tailor king. Now that gets your attention. You try to laugh it off. Tailor king? That's a bit much, don't you think? But Marcy squints at you. "You look familiar," she mutters. "Me?" You blink. "No, I've just got one of those tired faces." Still, as the day wears on, the rumors grow. You hear a passing bard singing off-key. "Oh, shiny disk of noble grace, sewn by fate in cotton lace, it came from hands both worn and old, a thread-bound heart, a tale retold." You nearly trip on a cabbage. "Wait a minute," you whisper, heart pounding. "That's my button." You rush home and dig through your thread jar, your coat pockets, the scraps in the mending pile. No matching buttons. Just that one odd, silvery one. The one you lost when you sneezed. You sit down, stunned. Your button, your coat button, is in the palace, being guarded like dragon eggs. Probably has its own bathrobe by now. You rub your eyes. Maybe it's a dream. Maybe someone put sleep mint in your tea again. Looking at you, Marcy. But no. Out your window, you spot a group of schoolchildren arguing over what kind of toast the sacred disc would prefer. Things are spiraling. You sit back and take a long breath. You're just a tailor, a tired one. You don't want attention. You don't want power. And you definitely don't want your coat button to accidentally spark a cultural revolution. But you also kind of want it back. It was a really nice button. Waiting for continue, you sit at your rickety little kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea that's gone cold. It's hard to taste anything when the entire kingdom might be worshipping your missing button. Outside your window, things have gone from quirky to deeply bizarre. A street performer is juggling fake buttons while reciting the oath of the shimmering circle. A child walks by holding a loaf of bread with a hole poked in the middle, claiming it's blessed with the sacred shape. And across the way, someone's hung up a banner that reads, "The button nose." You pinch the bridge of your nose. Should have stitched a zipper. But back at the palace, the situation is getting even more unhinged. The button, let's call it Button Prime now, because apparently it deserves a superhero name, is still on display, but its room has been transformed. There's a velvet rope around the pedestal, there's incense, there's a choir. At sunrise, Queen Marilena stands before it with her court gathered behind her in elegant, over-the-top gowns that swoosh like wind in a curtain shop. The choir sings, round and bright, a thread-bound light, born from shadow, stitched in night. Princess Velda tries to disappear into her sleeve. The queen raises her hand. "I declare," she says, "that this object be known henceforth as the royal sigil of fate's thread." Someone gasps. Someone else faints. Commander Bristle clears his throat. "Shall I prepare the national emblem redesign, Your Majesty?" "Yes," she says. "And summon the poets. I want it on currency, on scrolls, on slippers." You'd think someone would object. But the thing is, when people want to believe in something, even something round, small, and formerly attached to your coat, they really commit. Soon, stories begin to appear. The Grand Historian remembers seeing the sigil on a tapestry in the Forbidden Cellar. A fortune teller in the market suddenly claims her great-grandmother was touched by the threaded disc. Even Horace, yes, our sweet, confused stable boy, writes a dramatic journal entry. Day 3. The button spoke to me in my dreams. It asked for warm cinnamon rolls and vengeance, unsure of deeper meaning. Meanwhile, back at your place, you're sewing a pair of socks together out of stress. You're not angry. You're just bewildered, tired, curious, and maybe, just a little bit, concerned that they'll start holding parades in honor of the one who sewed the first stitch, which is when it happens. A palace herald knocks on your door. Not just any herald. A trumpet-blowing, cape-wearing, gold-threaded guy with a voice like thunder and a nose like a cheese grater. He clears his throat dramatically. "Citizen," he booms, "you are summoned to contribute to the Royal Button Lore Archive." You blink. "I'm sorry, the what?" He unfurls a scroll longer than your hallway. The Sovereign Historical Society, in partnership with the Palace Department of Mystical Threads, requests oral accounts from local stitchers, darners, and zipper artists. I'm a tailor, you interrupt. Tailors, he concedes with a dramatic nod, to speak on the mythical disc's cultural pre-shadowing. You stare at him. He stares back. You're both blinking a lot. Okay, you say finally. What if I told you it was my coat button? The herald smiles like someone who's heard too many ridiculous things today. Of course it was, he says, and I'm the Duke of Cheese. No, really, you insist, grabbing the coat and pointing to the missing spot. It fell off right here 2 nights ago. He peers at the coat, sucks in a breath. Then, in a slow, reverent voice, this is the holy absence. You blink. The what now? The divine void left behind after the ascension of the disc, he whispers. Truly, you are blessed. You try to explain again, but he bows low and gallops off before you can say another word. And that's when you realize this has gotten away from you. Fast. The next day, the town square hosts the first annual Festival of the Button. There are fireworks. There's a dance called the Spiral Stitch. Someone bakes a cake in the exact shape of the button. It's oddly delicious. The queen gives a speech. Let us never forget the lesson of the button, that even the smallest, roundest among us may carry great meaning. Also, new national motto, stay sewn. You bury your face in your hands. But perhaps the most outrageous twist comes just after dinner. You're walking home trying to avoid eye contact with a guy dressed as a button. Yes, full foam costume, he's sweating buckets. When a group of monks approaches you. Monks, clad in gray robes with thread patterns stitched into their hems. Their leader, Brother Snip, smiles peacefully and says, "You were seen in the dreams." "Oh no," you murmur. "We believe you are the unstitched prophet," he continues. "The one whose thread began the loop." You laugh nervously. No, I'm just a guy who sneezed his coat apart." But the monks aren't having it. They offer you a seat at their candlelit circle of reflection. They hum, they chant. One of them presents you with a beautifully carved wooden button. "I made it to honor the original," he says, eyes wide with pride. You hold it in your hands. It's warm, detailed, sincere, and you sigh. Because you realize this isn't just a misunderstanding anymore. It's a movement. And somewhere in the palace, your button, the actual button, is lying on velvet under a crystal dome, surrounded by guards, theories, and at least one bard who's writing an epic called The Stitch That Changed the Stars. You lean back, gaze at the night sky, and whisper to yourself, I really hope nobody asks me to lead a revolution. Waiting for continue? So now you're kind of a prophet. Not by choice, obviously. No one ever chooses to be a prophet. It's not a career path. There's no school for it. You didn't fill out a form. All you did was sneeze on a Tuesday. And now people are waiting outside your home, hoping you'll bless their coat pockets. One woman asks if you'll breathe on her sewing kit. You shut the door gently and sit on the floor, trying not to scream into a pillow made of old socks. It's getting out of hand and fast. This morning, a stranger dropped off a loaf of sanctified rye and said, "May your crumbs always be round." A poet named Dandelion Knock-Knees tried to interview your cat because felines carry prophetic vibes. And someone's carved a statue of you. Well, your head, out of a pumpkin. The likeness is questionable. The chin is alarming. You've never wanted less attention in your life, but ignoring it isn't working. It's snowballing. Which is why, that evening, you sneak into the palace. Well, okay. Sneak is a generous word. You wear your old mail delivery hat, because nobody questions mail carriers, carry a small cloth bag of Tailor's chalk, because nobody questions chalk, and walk through the front gates like you know what you're doing. Confidence is 90% of infiltration. The other 10% is not tripping over your own feet. Once inside, you nod at a guard who looks vaguely sleepy and mutter, "Urgent stitch report." He just grunts and waves you through. You can't believe it's working. The palace is even grander on the inside. You pass endless corridors draped in velvet banners, many of which now feature stylized images of the button, often with sunbeams, wings, or tiny halos. It's deeply surreal. You find your way to the royal display room. It's locked, naturally, but you've picked tougher knots in your day. After a few fiddles with a bobby pin and some mild swearing, the door clicks open. And there it is, your button. It's sitting under a crystal dome on a velvet pedestal. 2 candles flicker gently beside it. There's a small plaque that reads, "The Disk of Eternal Order, date of awakening, unknown, discovered by divine providence." You walk toward it like it might float away. It hasn't changed. Still a bit scuffed around the edge. Still that tiny scratch from where you dropped it on the cobblestones outside Big Fred's barber hut. It's yours. You whisper, "Hey, buddy." And then, without a dramatic speech, without fireworks or music or monks, you reach out and gently lift the crystal dome. It's lighter than you thought. The button gleams in the candlelight. And then, you pocket it. That's it. Heist complete. You turn to go, heart pounding. You fully expect alarms to blare, or guards to tackle you, or the queen herself to burst in shouting, "Unhand that holy circle!" But nothing happens. You slip back out as quietly as you came in, pretending to deliver urgent chalk all the way down the corridor. Outside, the night is cool and quiet. You walk home with the button in your coat pocket, right back where it started. Now here's where things could have ended if the world were a calm and reasonable place. But it isn't. And the very next morning, the kingdom erupts into chaos. Commander Bristle discovers the empty pedestal during his sacred object staring hour. He gasps so hard his monocle flies off and hits a bust of Queen Marilina's grandmother. The palace is locked down instantly. Trumpets blare, guard parrots squawk. A royal bulletin is issued. The button has ascended. That's right, they think it vanished on its own. Within hours, theories emerge. The button has returned to the heavens. The button has moved to its next chosen vessel. The button turned into a cloud and is now watching us all in vapor form. One particularly excited court wizard insists it transformed into a goose. No one knows why. You sit at home, the button safely tucked in your sewing box, and think, "I'm never going to get out of this without someone forming a shrine around my laundry." Meanwhile, public reaction goes nuclear. The plaza fills with believers holding button-shaped signs that say, "Come back round one," and "Stitch us together again." Someone writes a play called The Great Unfastening. A man paints his face silver and climbs onto a lamppost, shouting, "I am the button now." You avoid leaving the house entirely. But fate, as usual, is a nosy little gremlin. 3 days later, Princess Velda herself shows up at your door. She doesn't knock. She just lets herself in and sits at your table like she owns the chair. She probably does. You freeze mid-toast butter. She stares at you, arms crossed, hair immaculate, expression unreadable. "So," she says, "you took it." You blink. "I don't know what you mean." She raises an eyebrow. "Please. I was raised by a queen, trained in 5 kinds of diplomacy, and forced to endure 17 years of royal dinners without exploding. I know guilt when I see it." You glance at your sewing box. Velda follows your eyes. Then she sighs. "Honestly, I don't blame you." You frown. "You don't?" She shakes her head. "The whole thing's ridiculous. I'm the only person in the palace who remembers it was just a button. You know, before Bristle's brain melted and someone tried to crown a salad." You can't help but laugh. "Why are you here?" you ask. She leans forward. "To ask what you're going to do next." You pause. The toast goes cold in your hand. I don't know," you admit. "It was mine, but now people think it's theirs or everyone's, or some kind of magical destiny disc." Velda nods slowly. "Well, I can help you disappear if that's what you want. New name, new coat, new continent." You blink. "Wait, you can do that?" She shrugs. "I'm a princess. I have a getaway map sewn into my skirt." And suddenly, you're facing a choice. Keep the button, leave quietly, let the world believe it vanished in divine light, or return it and face whatever strange, ridiculous storm follows. Velda looks at you. Either way, you do it tonight. You glance at your sewing box. You think about your little shop, your quiet life, the smell of thread and old tea leaves. You think about all the people out there, some silly, some scared, some genuinely moved, hoping for something to hold on to. And you whisper, "Okay, but which way do you go?" That, my friend, is for part 5. Waiting for continue. Velda gives you a look. Not the royal one she uses when someone forgets to bow, but the real one. The look of a person who's seen things catch fire while staying weirdly calm about it. "Whatever we do," she says, "you'll need snacks." You're halfway through slicing 2 apples and a suspiciously stale scone when she lays out the options on a napkin like they're battle plans. "Option 1, she says, pointing with a spoon, "we smuggle the button back into the palace, return it to the display case, and pretend it went on a sacred pilgrimage. You raise an eyebrow. That sounds very illegal. She grins. So's eating the queen's cheese when no one's looking. Have you? Regularly. She clears her throat and points to the other corner of the napkin. Option 2. We announce it was never divine. Tell the truth and prepare for a level of emotional collapse normally reserved for canceled festivals and broken soup bowls. You wince. Yikes. Exactly. She folds the napkin in half. And option 3, we run. You blink. Run where? East. The glimmering coast. There's a boat that leaves every full moon. I know a guy who owes me a favor involving a goose, a flute, and a diplomatic misunderstanding. You blink again. She shrugs. It's a long story. Your eyes drift to the sewing box sitting innocently on the table. Inside, the button rests on a patch of purple felt, unaware of the international drama it has caused. You breathe out. Velda? I made it. I just made it. She nods. I believe you. But people don't want simple. They want wonder. Especially when their lives feel dull and unstuck. You whisper, I never meant to fool anyone. She smiles softly. You didn't. They fooled themselves. The button just helped. You lean back in your chair, eyes closed, and then you decide. You're not going to lie. You're not going to vanish. You're going to tell the truth. But you're going to do it your way. Velda doesn't even argue. She just passes you your coat. All right then, but we'll need a better speech than surprise. Your god was my laundry mishap. You snort. Fair. That night, the palace plaza is packed. Torches flicker. Music plays. The crowd sways and chants low. Dreamy songs about unity and roundness and something called thread chakra. A man next to a melon cart is crying into a ball of yarn. You step onto the small wooden stage set up for what was supposed to be reflections on the disc, a night of poetry and pear pudding. Velda follows, whispering, now or never, Prophet Stitch. The crowd falls silent when you clear your throat. Hi, you begin. Not exactly divine, but honest. I know a lot of you believe the button. You hold it up between two fingers, is a symbol of fate or magic, or some kind of cosmic mending. Someone in the front row whispers, it glows. Nope, you say gently. That's just lantern light. You take a breath. The air is thick with expectation and maybe a hint of roasted parsnips. This button, you continue, was mine. It came off my coat. I sneezed and it popped off. Rolled under a cart, that's it. Someone gasps, but the shimmer? It's brass, you say. And it's been polished by 1,000 adoring hands. You wait. No one throws fruit. You add, you didn't need a divine object to feel hope. You made it meaningful, all of you. There's a long silence. Then, oddly, someone claps. Then someone else. Then the entire plaza erupts in applause. Not angry, not betrayed, just grateful. Because sometimes people don't need magic. They just need something to gather around. And now that you've told them it was never more than it was, it becomes something else, a shared story, a beautiful accident, a myth made of buttons and longing and laughter. Later, Queen Marilina approaches you, flanked by guards in formal beating and at least one person holding a ceremonial school. You brace for scolding. She just says, I knew it. Your jaw drops. She sips from a goblet. But it was fun, wasn't it? You blink. You mean you? Of course, she says. I once believed in a glowing turnip. Blink. Everyone needs a little nonsense now and then. Velda snorts. The queen adds, we'll pivot. Turn the divine disc into a symbol of community, unity, mending the kingdom, that sort of thing. Bristle's already drafting banners. You hesitate, then offer her the button. She shakes her head. No, it belongs with you. You turn to leave, but before you go, you take one last look at the crowd, the laughter, the joy, the gentle letting go of belief without bitterness. And you realize something profound. You didn't fool a kingdom. You stitched it back together, one round, shiny piece at a time. Waiting for continue. You wake up the next morning in your own bed, sunlight slipping through the curtains like it's peeking in to ask, was that all real? You sit up slowly, the weight of the past week wrapped around you like a wool blanket. On the bedside table sits the button, not glowing, not vibrating, not singing in a mysterious celestial frequency, just quietly round and brass, like always. You pick it up, roll it between your fingers, and sigh. You little rascal. Downstairs, Velda is making toast. Morning, Colt Lever, she says without turning around. Want jam or honey? You blink. You're still here? She shrugs. I like your teeth, and your cat keeps sitting on my lap like I'm royalty. She's got taste, you mutter, sitting at the table. Velda spreads jam with dramatic flair. So, how does it feel to tell an entire kingdom the truth and not get tarred in fabric softener? You think for a second. Weirdly peaceful. Good. She passes you a piece of toast. Now what? You stare at the button resting beside your plate. The answer isn't obvious, and maybe that's a good thing. Later that afternoon, the royal court issues an official decree. Not about you, specifically, but about the meaning of the whole button situation. It reads, "In recognition of the communal fabric that binds us, and the accidental brilliance of a certain well-meaning tailor, we henceforth declare the first day of the New Thread Festival, a celebration of mending, meaning, and magnificent misunderstandings." Below it is a wax seal. It looks suspiciously like a button. You laugh so hard you spill your tea. In the following days, your little shop becomes a quiet hub, not of worship, but of something gentler. People bring in torn sleeves and unraveling hems and ask, "Do you think this can be saved?" You always smile and say yes. Sometimes you tell them stories while you work, about buttons that wandered and coats that refused to fall apart. People listen with soft eyes. No one asks if it's all true. They don't need to. Velda visits often, sometimes to help, sometimes to loaf around on your rug reading strange poetry written by retired guards. Sometimes to bring cookies she borrowed from the palace kitchen. They're suspiciously shaped like the button. And then one day, because the kingdom never stays quiet for long, a traveling noble from the north arrives with a carriage made of polished beetle shell and a monocle that doubles as a sundial. He stops outside your shop, steps inside, and says with flair, "I have come to see the tailor of truth." You look up from hemming a pair of rather rebellious trousers. "That's not my name." He flourishes a scroll. "Ah, but it is in the north. You're famous there." Rumors spread like jam on toast. They say you held the round truth in your palm and didn't even flinch. Velda whispers, "It's been like a week." You ask what he wants. He grins. "A story. One I can bring home. One about something small and perfect that made people believe again." You glance toward the sewing box. He follows your gaze. "May I see it?" You open the lid slowly. The button gleams up at both of you, innocent and quiet. He stares for a moment, then softly he says, "It's a button." You nod. "Yup." There's a pause. Then the noble laughs. Not in mockery, but in relief. "That's perfect," he says. "I'll tell them that it was always just a button, and that it didn't need to be more to mean something." You hand him a little sketch of it instead. "This travels better." He bows deeply. As he leaves, Velda nudges your arm. "So, how's it feel being international now?" You groan. "I just want to finish this waistband." "Too late," she says. "You're officially a legend. Button bard, seamstress sage, prophet of pockets." You bury your face in fabric. But the next morning, you find a letter slipped under the door. It's from the Queen, neatly folded. No perfume, no glitter, just ink and truth. "Dear Tailor, I hope you don't mind the nickname. I've been thinking about your story, and I've decided we should never lock wonder behind glass again. The next museum exhibit will be interactive, possibly musical, possibly narrated by parrots. More importantly, I want to appoint you royal mender, not just of clothes, of stories, of silly things that become serious and serious things that need softening. You may, of course, say no. But if you say yes, we'll start with the royal couch. It's ripped again, probably bristle. Yours in threads, Marilina. You read it 3 times, then you hang it on your wall and say yes. Your new job is strange. Some days you're mending ceremonial pants while 2 dukes argue about cloud shapes. Other days you're hosting storytelling circles for kids who bring their favorite buttons to show you. Sometimes people still call you the prophet. You always smile and say, "Nope, just the tailor." But you let them tell their stories, and you learn slowly that truth and wonder aren't enemies. That something can be small and ordinary and still carry the weight of something much bigger. One evening, Velda finds you staring at the button again. "You ever think," she asks, "about what would have happened if you hadn't picked it back up?" You smile. "All the time." She passes you a cup of tea. "Still glad you did?" You look around at the fading sunset, the laughter in the streets, the letters from strangers who heard the tale and decided to believe in something again, even if it's just kindness. You whisper, "Yeah, I really am." And for the first time in a long time, The button doesn't feel heavy. It just feels right. Waiting for continue. You didn't think a tailor could have office hours. But here you are, sitting behind a desk shaped like a thimble in the royal mending chamber, an actual room recently renamed by the Queen from Miscellaneous Storage East Wing. Outside the tall arched window, the castle gardens hum with the sound of bees and gossip. Inside, there's a velvet rope, a queue of guests holding everything from ripped cloaks to crumpled poems, and a brass nameplate that reads, Royal Mender, Consultations, Curiosities, and Calamities, Minor. You sip your third cup of chamomile and glance down at today's docket. First, a nobleman's ceremonial cape that refuses to behave. Second, a child who insists his jacket won't work unless it's sung to. Third, an official request from Queen Marilina for a pocket added to her favorite gown. For candy. You sigh fondly. This is your life now. Velda lounges nearby, filing her nails with an actual gemstone. She somehow talked her way into being your uncertified assistant of vibe management. Don't forget the jelly bean inspection at 4, she says without looking up. Very official, you murmur. The door creaks open. A small boy walks in, clutching something in his fist. His eyes are big, not scared, just full. You crouch beside him. What have you got there, friend? He opens his hand. A button. Just a simple wooden one, cracked and a little sticky with jam. It fell off my papa's coat, he whispers. And he's gone now. But I want to keep it forever. Can you make it stay? Your chest tightens. You smile gently. Yes, I think I can. You thread your needle slowly, carefully sewing the button onto a little swatch of his father's coat, making it into a keepsake he can carry. You give it to him with both hands. He beams like you've given him treasure. Velda watches quietly. Later, when the boy is gone, she asks, You okay? You nod. I think this is why I said yes. And you mean it. Your fame doesn't fade. It just changes shape. Artists begin painting images of buttons in murals and alleyways. The royal garden unveils a labyrinth of hedges shaped like a giant sewing pattern. And every week, someone leaves a note outside your door. Some are silly. Dear Button Prophet, can you fix my cat's attitude? Some are sweet. I mended my own shirt today. Thought you'd like to know. One says only, you made me believe again. In small things. In myself. That one you frame. Then one day a messenger arrives, red-faced, breathless, holding a scroll sealed in urgent wax. From the eastern provinces, he gasps. They're holding a summit of symbols. You're requested to attend. Velda peeks over your shoulder. That sounds suspiciously like mandatory myth management, you groan. Do I have to wear the robe again? No, says the messenger, but the queen suggests the pin with the little crown. You sigh. Fine, but I'm not speaking unless there's tea. There's tea. There's also an audience of robed officials, poets, priests, and at least one philosophical goat. You stand on a round stage, the button on a ribbon around your neck. No longer divine. Still adored. A woman in blue asks, So what is the truth of the button? You pause, and then say, The truth is, people needed it. And that was enough. Someone claps. Then more. By the time you sit down, someone's already sketching you on a napkin. Velda leans in. You're going to end up in textbooks. Dear stars, you mutter, I'll need better hair. Months pass. You start teaching a little class, stitching with meaning. Not everyone gets it, but they all leave with something patched, sewn, or at least covered in decorative embroidery. One day, Queen Marilina drops by. In disguise, of course. Which means wearing sunglasses, a floppy hat, and a fake mustache she forgot to glue properly. Incognito, she whispers. Your Majesty, you deadpan, you're wearing your royal crest. She looks down. Oh, whoops. You pour tea. She sips and says, I think the kingdom's softer now. Softer, she nods. Less sharp around the edges. People laugh more. They fix things before throwing them out. They write poems about spoons. You smile. That sounds like progress. She glances at the button around your neck. Funny, she says. All this from that. You both fall silent for a moment. Then she asks, Do you ever regret it? Telling them? You look out the window. Children are skipping rope. An old man is playing a tune on a cracked violin. Someone's flying a kite shaped like a spool of thread. No, you say, because they didn't lose magic. They found out they were the magic. The queen grins, and for a second, you feel like the kingdom is stitched together with laughter, kindness, and just enough thread to hold everything in place. Waiting for continue, you're mending a very dramatic cape, black velvet, silver trim, apparently cursed to trip anyone who wears it, when you notice the silence. Too quiet. Velda isn't humming. No kids are tapping on the window asking if you've made the invisibility scarf yet. No random nobles are bickering over who gets their socks fixed first. You step outside. The street is empty. Even the birds are missing. You feel it before you see it. A ripple in the air, like the world took a deep breath and forgot to exhale. Then, clang, clang, clang. The castle bells. Emergency signal. You drop the cape and run, your apron flapping behind you like a reluctant sidekick. By the time you reach the town square, a crowd has gathered. People murmur, point, shuffle anxiously. In the center, standing stiff as a statue, is a man dressed head to toe in white. He's holding a scroll so long it drapes into the fountain. "I bring grave news," he announces, voice sharp as scissors. "The kingdom of Orsil has issued a declaration of authenticity." You blink. "That's not a real thing." "Oh, it is now," says Velda, appearing beside you with a bun she apparently grabbed mid-sprint. "They're demanding proof that the button of belief was ever sacred." You gape. "That's not the point." He unfurls the scroll further. "If proof is not presented within 3 days, the Kingdom of Threads will be listed in the Book of Folkloric Falsities." There's a dramatic gust of wind. Somehow pigeons fly in slow motion. "Okay, that was rehearsed," Velda mutters. The crowd gasps, not at the pigeons. At the idea that everything they've come to love, mending circles, button day, tiny shoulder capes, could be declared a farce. You step forward. This kingdom didn't need proof, you say. It needed a story, a reason to care. The white-clad man squints. But if it wasn't divine, it was, what, a hoax? You reach into your coat and pull out the button. It shines, not with magic, just with the soft gleam of something cherished. It was a gift, you say, from one person to another, like all the best things are. The crowd is quiet, listening. You take a deep breath. If that's not real, then what is? For a moment, you think he might say something snide. Instead, he just stares at the button, then rolls up his scroll with a sigh. "Well, now I feel silly," and walks off. Velda claps. 10 out of 10, no notes. But the moment lingers. The worry. What if some people do call it fake? What if the story fades? Back at your shop, you sit with Velda, sipping lukewarm tea. "I never wanted to be a symbol," you murmur. "I just wanted to fix buttons." "And yet," she says, "here you are, the Pope of Patchwork." You groan. "Don't call me that." But she's right. Like it or not, the kingdom sees you as something bigger now. So you do the only thing you can. You invite them in. You start the first annual Festival of Small Things. It features a button decorating contest, a relay race involving sock mending, free tea for anyone who tells a story beginning with "one time I lost a button." People come in droves. Children wear cloaks held together by candy wrappers. Elders teach embroidery tricks. A band plays a surprisingly catchy tune called "Stitch Me Up, Buttercup." And at the center of it all, you. Not as a prophet, not as a hero. Just as the tailor who reminded everyone that something small can matter. As the sun sets, a little girl hands you a note. It's folded like a fortune cookie and smells vaguely of crayons. You open it. It says, "Thank you for making the world more gentle." You press it to your chest. That night, you and Velda sit on the roof with cups of cocoa and watch as lanterns float into the sky, each carrying a single button tied to its base. You laugh. What if they rain down and cause minor injuries? Velda smirks. That would be the most on-brand ending imaginable. The stars twinkle. You don't need to look at the button to feel its presence anymore. It's in the air now, woven into people's lives, not as magic, but as memory. And that's more powerful than anything you ever stitched. You wait to find a bundle of letters on your doorstep. They're tied with ribbon and smell faintly of lavender and ink, the kind that stains your fingers and your soul if you read too closely. The top one is from Queen Marilina. "Dear Royal Mender, I've just returned from the Western Reaches. They've built a statue of the button. It's 15 feet tall. Someone knitted it a scarf. I laughed until I hiccuped. Thought you should know. P.S. They've invited us to their next poetry duel. You bring the thread metaphors, I'll bring snacks." You smile as you unfold the rest. From children, mostly. "Dear Tailor, I lost my first tooth and didn't cry. I think your button made me brave. Dear button guy, my dad says buttons are silly. I told him silly is good. He laughed." One note is scribbled in shaky handwriting. I'm 92 and I remembered how to darn socks today. Thank you for reminding me not to give up. You press the stack to your chest. Sometimes you wonder how far one stitch can reach. Apparently, across borders and ages, and whatever lies between fear and hope. The next morning, you find Velda balancing on a stool, trying to hang a sign above the shop. It reads, "The button made me do it." You raise an eyebrow. Subtle, she grins. Marketing. You shake your head, but let it stay. That afternoon, a young scholar knocks. She wears round glasses, ink-stained sleeves to run, and a face full of hesitant excitement. "I'm studying cultural belief transfer," she says. "And your button, well, it's kind of a textbook case." You sigh. "So I'm a footnote now?" She blushes. "More like a full chapter. May I ask, what do you think made the story spread?" You think for a moment, then say, "Because people wanted it to be true. Not the magic, the meaning." She writes that down furiously. Before she leaves, she glances at the button and asks, "Do you still believe in it?" You pause. Then you smile. "I believe in what it became." She nods. "That's better than magic." And she's right. That evening, Bristle the royal goose breaks into your shop again. You find him nesting in your yarn basket, surrounded by pink thread and one very confused cat. You sigh, pet his head, and say, "You're lucky I believe in second chances." Velda walks in, sees the scene, and mutters, "The kingdom's spiritual center. Everyone." You're too tired to argue. Instead, you sit, letting the soft hum of twilight soak into the shop. And then, a knock. Not a fast one. Not urgent. Just polite. You open the door to find a woman with silver streaks in her hair, wrapped in a heavy wool cloak. She looks at you and says, "I was there, before all of it, when it was just a little button in a drawer." Your breath catches. "You worked at the shop before me?" She nods. "Long ago, I was the apprentice to old Evan." You step back to let her in. She walks slowly, taking everything in. The warm lighting, the thread colors, the jar labeled "buttons that refuse to behave." "He'd have liked this," she murmurs. "He used to say, a stitch isn't just a fix, it's a promise." You swallow the lump in your throat. She sets a tiny velvet pouch on the counter. "I came to return something. Inside is a button, nearly identical to yours, but carved with tiny flowers, like laughter frozen in brass. He gave me one too," she says. "Told me it would keep me grounded, but I think maybe it helped lift me instead." You smile. 2 buttons, 2 stories, 2 threads in the same tapestry. You place them side by side on the counter. They shine in the candlelight, quiet, steady, and very real. Velda lights a candle and mutters, "This whole thing started with one misplaced button." You laugh. "You say that like it's absurd." "It is absurd," she says, smirking. "Absurd and lovely, and possibly contagious." You nudge her with your elbow. "Good." She leans her head on your shoulder. "Hey," she murmurs. "What happens when people stop believing?" You look at the buttons. "They won't," you whisper, "because belief doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it's just passing a thread from one person to the next." Outside, the lanterns begin to glow. Inside, your shop is warm and still. The woman from the past smiles softly, the former apprentice now a part of the new legend. A full circle, or maybe just a spiral, winding gently outward. From a button to a kingdom to something even bigger, a story that won't be forgotten. Waiting for continue, you wake to birdsong and the smell of warm pastries drifting in from the market. For once, there's no line outside your shop, no urgent knocks, no noble requesting emergency embroidery. Just quiet. Just morning. You take your tea to the back step, where the little herb garden has become a jungle of mint and wildflowers. Velda once called it aggressively whimsical. Now bees call it home. You lean back against the doorframe, the old wooden button in your palm. It's smooth now, worn by years of touch, talk, and tenderness. Not shining, not pulsing, just being, the way real things do. Velda joins you, carrying a ridiculous tray piled with toast, jam, honey, and a note that reads, "For the tailor who taught us to hold on." You both eat in silence for a while. Then she says, "You've started a religion, you know." You sigh, biting into toast. "It's not a religion, it's just a really good metaphor." "Metaphors are dangerous," she says, mouth full. "They sneak up on you. One day you're fixing a coat, the next you're being prayed to by someone wearing a button hat." You laugh. "I like the button hat." She shrugs, flair. Later you clean the shop. You organize buttons by size, shape, and attitude. You pin little notes beside them. This one helped a kid say goodbye. This one sparked the festival of small fires. Don't ask. This one still smells faintly of cinnamon and revolution. Every stitch, every tale, every silly, precious moment has left a mark. And now it's time. You write a letter. Not to a person. To the kingdom. You post it on the community board by the fountain, where people leave everything from recipes to love poems. Dear you, if you're reading this, you've probably heard the story. Maybe you even believe in it, or maybe you don't. Doesn't matter. What matters is that something small gave you something big. Courage, comfort, a laugh when you needed it. I was just a tailor. Still am. The button didn't start as magic, but we made it magic. With each hand that passed it, each whisper that carried it, each stitch sewn with love. So if you're looking for something to believe in, try this. Believe in care. Believe in stories. Believe in the things you fix, even when they look too broken. And when your thread runs low, borrow some of mine. With gentle hands, yours always the tailor. When you return to the shop, a child has left a button on your stoop. Bright yellow, glows like morning. You add it to the window display. Another thread. Another life touched. And you know, without needing anyone to say it, the story is safe. In the years to come, the button of belief changes again. Not in form, in meaning. New stories rise, some even wilder than yours. But yours remains the one people return to when their coats tear, when the world feels loose at the seams. You become a kind of myth. Yes, but more than that, a friend. A whisper across pillowcases, a reminder in the hush of night that small things are worth holding on to, especially in the dark. Cool down, 300 words. The stars are climbing, slow and certain, and the air wraps around you like a quilt you didn't know you needed. You sit at the window, fingers resting on a patch of worn cloth, your work for the day finally done. The tea is cold now, but you don't mind. The world has softened. Out in the village, quiet laughter rises from a porch. A door clicks shut. A cat settles itself against a windowsill like it owns the moon. The candle flickers beside you, casting soft golden shadows that look like old friends stretching after a long nap. You let your eyes fall to the button, now resting in a tiny glass dish. It doesn't glow, it doesn't hum, it just exists, steady and calm, like truth, like love, like stories whispered just before sleep. Somewhere, a child is being tucked in with a button sewn into the hem of their blanket. Somewhere else, someone is mending a shirt instead of throwing it away. And somewhere in between, the heart of a kingdom beats gently, held together by laughter, stitches, and all the small things that make life feel a little less lonely. You breathe, and with that breath, the day slips quietly into night. The thread holds, the story rests, the lights dim. Sleep finds you, not like a sudden wave, but like a soft hand brushing your hair and whispering, "You did well, you can let go now." End of script. Good night,